Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most beneficent. That was to channel courage to give this talk because it did take a lot of strength. So my talk is titled How to Empower Minorities to Revolutionize the Status Quo. So in this increasingly globalized Western world, many of us, the majority of us, can identify as a minority in one or several respects. And most of us are conscious of the major minority experiences that one could have. For example, being a minority based on one's race or ethnicity, having a disability, having a minority political opinion, and not being heterosexual. But there are more minority experiences, circumstantial ones, that we can overlook because of our own privileges. For example, when I step off this podium, you'll notice I am a very short person, and it does affect my day-to-day experiences. But there are other experiences too that affect people's lives, make them more vulnerable. For example, being female, being old-aged, speaking a foreign language, and the list just goes on. And these are important experiences to think about, to consider, because from years of research, we know that living through your life as a minority makes you incredibly vulnerable to many kinds of stressors, like psychological, social, access to education, access to healthcare, and the list only continues from there. So I want to share a little bit more about me so that you have context in the research that I want to do and that I want to talk about. So I find myself to be a minority in all my daily encounters, and I've felt that way for as long as I've been in the US. I identify as a gay Muslim man of color, and I went to a religious institution in Bangladesh where I was born. And in that context, I didn't have any concept of sexuality or sexual identity. Didn't know that that was a thing, that could be a thing. But then my parents immigrated when I was 8 to the United States. And when we moved here, with time, I started to be more aware of not only my sexual identity, but all the other identities that make me a truly intersectional human being. And in the process, I've learned to consider my identity, my homosexuality, and my religious identity as a unique gift rather than an unfortunate, contentious reality. What I've been most impressed by is that my family has become, over time, flexible about this issue. And so I'm very passionate to study sort of the transformative processes that parents or family members take to become appreciative of their family members' multiple identities that seem to be in conflict but are all salient to their identity formation. So with the help of a generous donation from a Brandeis alum, I was able to afford a study abroad in the Netherlands, where I encountered this LGBT Muslim community, and I was really inspired by what was going on there. And I was so motivated that I became an activist in their community myself. And in this process, I got to do research with the 3 activists that I'm going to talk about. And somewhere in that process, I got involved with their families as well. The mothers of the 3 people that I've interviewed decided that they wanted to get involved as well. So I collected narratives, not only from them, but from their parents as well. And this was pioneering research. So SIT, the program that I went with, was excited. I was excited, and it was going to be great. So the themes that I've collected, that I've realized seem to be critical to shaping of an LGBT Muslim activist ideology are family solidarity and religious affiliation. I'll talk about solidarity first. So this is Done Phil, one of the activists that I've interviewed while I was abroad. And Done, so she didn't have a typical coming out story because she didn't decide to come out herself. She was outed by her ex-husband, who she was married to at the time. When she felt she was ready to come out, she told him, and then he outed her to her entire family. And when she did that, her mom had a very aversive reaction to this, but her older brother had a much more negative reaction. He was about to attack her violently, but then the mom jumped in her defense And that really empowered her and made her feel that she had someone to support her. And then she moved back into her house, and she started to develop a much more open, honest, communicative relationship with her family. When I asked her how her relationship has been with her family since then, with her mother since then, this is what she said to me. Eventually, she got used to the idea. She got to see that I'm much more comfortable, happier, have a better attitude, and I'm more open. Because before I was so shy and reserved and closed off, she saw that I was more self-assured and patient. My mom is my biggest supporter now. She's always telling me to tell her if she could help out. She wants to be very involved. This is a truly inspirational woman. I met her, and she's so kind. And the fact that her mom showed that kind of support in spite of her own beliefs enabled this lady to become an activist in her community. Similarly, Munira Shirwa, she works with Respect to Love, an organization that that caters to LGBT people of color. So Munira decided that she was going to take a lot of time to come to accept and love herself before she sought that from anyone else, especially her family. In fact, she waited until her father passed away to come out to the rest of her family. Before her father passed away, on his deathbed, he said to Munira, "There is something that you're hiding from us, and I know what it is, and you should feel comfortable sharing it with us, because I'm going to love you no matter who you are." So after that happened, she became much more confident in her identity. And 2 years after he passed away, she decided to come out to her mother. And when she did, she told her, "Mom, I do not need your acceptance. I just want your respect," because that's what she worked to have for herself. So when she did come out, she gave her mother an entire year to come to terms with her sexuality. And at the end of that year, when she was communicating with her mom about this issue, this is what she said. I gave her an example that she could understand. "I can't change my skin color. Do you know how it feels to be in a house full of Ku Klux Klan members and you're the only black person?" Then it hit her that I couldn't do anything about this. So we started talking more and more. We talked about everything, how it affected me. She actually understands what Dad meant on his deathbed, and the puzzle was complete. So from both their stories, they had someone, a family member, a mother or father, to tell them that they recognized their struggle in life, that they mattered, and that was enough to sort of empower them to become not only agents of change within themselves, but for their communities. The next thing is religious affiliation. In each of their stories, it seemed that being LGBT and working towards LGBT emancipation wasn't enough, and they really cared about being Muslim too, and that was an integral part of their identity. So everything changed when they met Imam Muhsin Hendricks, who is one of 4 gay imams in the world. He's from South Africa, and he gave a lecture in Amsterdam in 2011, which all 3 of the participants attended. They were all very cautious of what he was preaching. They didn't want to believe him, trust him, because they had been told that there is no space within Islam for LGBT-identified individuals. But throughout the lecture, they started to warm up to his idea, and by the end of it, they were all in tears. Because by the end of this lecture, they had realized that there is space within Islam. There is space when we make that space, when people who have privilege make that space for people who are vulnerable or of marginalized communities. So when they've acquired that kind of peace and security for themselves, they felt that it was necessary to bring that to other people as well. Donefil, in meeting Muhsin Hendricks, says, "That was a new revelation for me. When I again became more conscious of my religion and sexuality, it gave me a second boost in believing in what I do is the right thing to do. I don't have any regrets or guilt. That made me feel that what I do is really important, and I also really feel the urge to preach that towards other LGBT Muslims." So clearly, these experiences, these statements of empathy and solidarity, and vocalizing one's awareness of minorities' conditions and struggles have empowered these individuals to become activists. So what can privileged people do? What the takeaway message is recognition, empathizing, and vocalizing our awareness. When we provide these tools to people who are marginalized, it seems that it has a much bigger of an impact than we imagine for these people. Because not only do they become safe and comfortable in becoming members of society, they then feel the need to make the world a better place for everybody. So this is my senior year, and I had the opportunity to go back to Posse Plus Retreat for the last time this year. This is my posse. And for those of you who don't know what Posse is, I'm just going to give a quick introduction. It's a national merit-based leadership scholarship that recruits 10 academically motivated, intelligent, but passionate people to come together and support each other in a posse and ensure success throughout their college careers. Posse is very successful not only because it recruits these wonderfully intelligent and motivated people, but because it also continues to sustain that curiosity and empower these people beyond college in their workforce. One of the Posse treasures is the Posse Plus Retreat, where Posse creates a safe environment for everyone who comes, students, faculty, and staff, to engage intellectually on an elected topic, and where students feel that they're safe enough to share their vulnerabilities, to share their insecurities. And there, what that creates is a sense of empowerment, because when these students are back on campus, they feel that they're able to have a voice, talk about their issues that matter to them. And then you see them becoming leaders on campus as well. So after coming back from PPR, I asked a few members to share with me their experience with PPR. Atlanta Posse scholar Terry Shai-Pizziri reflects, "I didn't want to cry, I didn't want to attend, I didn't care to get emotional, but once I went through the weekend, I realized that the retreat and the crying was really symbolic of us being able to be vulnerable, put down our walls, and overcome our pasts by accepting it, and accepting that it has not and will not stop me from doing great things, because I'm strong and I'm not alone." So what this tells me, and I hope to you as well, is that Posse creates a community feel. Knowing that other minorities are going through the same struggles is enough to make you feel that you belong in this community, in the Brandeis community. And that is empowering in that you feel that you can continue to strive towards progress like your fellow Posse mates. But what's even more telling is that not only does it affect the Posse scholars, but Posse apparently generates these senses of empowerment in people who are not Posse scholars but identify as minorities on campus. Christine Fan went to PPR for the first time this year, and she says, "While Brandeis is known for its stance on social justice, it's hard for me to see this in the student body at times, especially when you're so caught up in our own academic worlds and social lives. However, attending PPR reminded me that my peers do care about social issues and are just as passionate as I am." So it's clear that Posse isn't an establishment to empower only the students who are in the group, but that it affects all minorities on campus. So what now? Some strategic things that we can work on is that we can train our educators, our professors, in terms of the way they prepare their lessons for their classroom. We can give them more narratives. We can give them more perspectives, literature resembling the stories of the true demographic of their classroom, so that when they're preparing their lessons, they're not putting too much pressure on the minority student to be representative of their entire community. We should put the pressure on the professors themselves. And second, we need to feel comfortable in acknowledging our own privileges and not feel guilty about them. Because in doing that, we're already bridging the gap that exists between those that are privileged and those that are vulnerable for their minority status. And lastly, when you recognize that minorities are going through their struggles and they're trying to communicate those to you, they're trying to open up, first of all, we need to make those spaces happen. Second, we need to be able to validate those experiences. Because from my research, as you've seen, just by a recognition, a statement of empathy, it goes so far in enabling these people to become agents of change. Thank you.